Hi, welcome everyone to the Social Chase. I'm Chase Taylor, and I'm co-hosting with my mom, Helen Taylor.
Thank you, Chase, and we'd like to welcome our guests. Welcome our guests.
Okay, today we're today we're going to have Dr. Roger Joe with us today, Annie, Cheyanne, and Aniela too.
So thank you so much. We're very excited. This is going to be our very first Social Chase event live. And we're very excited, Dr. Joe and his Spark team, that's what I call them, to join us today. So we're going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Joe. I also have that information I'm going to share on the screen. I'll read it to everybody while we're talking about Dr. Joe as well. But we'll do a little short intro to Dr. Joe. So Dr. Joe, he is a psychiatrist and researcher at the Yale Child Study Center, whose work for the past 20 years has focused on autism across the lifespan. Dr. Joe's background in psychiatry, public health, and medical science has shaped his non-traditional approach to improve quality of life using diverse simultaneous strategies. So Dr. Joe is so much involved in the autism community, and I'm so happy that we had the pleasure to meet him through the Yale CASI program, which is Community Autism Socials at Yale. And there's more information about the Yale CASI program. Please encourage your children, young adults to get involved with that program. It's free, and Dr. Joe has put so much love and effort into it, and you really enjoy his events that he has and different programs. So we're going to be talking today about the SPARK program. So Dr. Joe is the principal investigator for SPARK at Yale. It's the Simons Foundation Powering Autism Research for Knowledge. That's what SPARK means, which has supported and sponsored numerous autism-focused nonprofit organizations in Connecticut. SPARK, if you didn't know, is the largest genetic study of autism ever, and Yale is one of the dozens of participating autism research centers across the United States, right here in Connecticut. Okay, Chase, we'll talk about Annie.
Annie,
We're going to introduce SPARK team now.
oh, okay. So,
right here.
Okay. Annie, Cheyanne, and Aniela are all postgraduate research fellows on Dr. Joe's team at the Yale Child Study Center. They coordinate the Spark at Yale Study as well as facilitate Project Cassie, a community social group for individuals on the autism spectrum.
Very good. So welcome, Dr. Joe and the Spark team. We're very excited. And one of the reasons why we did bring this conversation to everyone, because, you know, I've seen Spark, we all see Spark on social media, we get the emails, but there's probably questions that we want to ask, but we never did. And so we're having this platform. So what is the most frequently asked questions to the Spark team? And so we figured we bring this to social media to have those nice conversations about what is Spark. And at the end, please hold on at the end because we have a family sharing about their experience about the SPARK study. So make sure you stay to the end to hear more about that. Okay, Chase.
So,
okay, let's start. So Dr. Joe, if you could tell us, what is SPARK and why is it so important?
So SPARK stands for Simons Powering Autism Research Knowledge. It is a lot of things. You know, we think about SPARK, most of what you hear about when you hear about SPARK is the saliva samples and questionnaires. You know, so a lot of people sort of associate SPARK with, you know, the genetic study. So it is part of SPARK is a genetic study looking for genetic contributors of autism. But there's another part of it that is very much a long-term project. So not are we looking to identify the genetic contributors, you know, but also trying to think about, you know, what outcomes, you know, what kind of features, you know, that we would ask you via questionnaires, you know, might connect to some of the genetic findings. You know, so there's the genetics part, and then there's a lot of the survey part that's sort of based on a lot of different relevant topics. So once you're part of Spark, usually the first step is people will submit the samples, answer some questionnaires online, but it really is an ongoing sort of partnership with community. Getting people involved in autism research, not just for the genetics part, but some of the more relevant or day-to-day questions that affect people who are living with autism and their families. So it really is a sort of a long-term research partnership at its core.
Okay, so Dr. Joe, with that information, which was wonderful about the genetics versus the questionnaire, what is Yale SPARK going to do? I mean, what is the purpose? What are they trying to find out with this study?
Sure. So the study has a number of objectives, so I myself like to see it in a couple of phases. So the first phase is focused on genetics and some basic characterization information that's collected through questionnaires. So in terms of the genetics, the study is looking at genetic contributors of autism. So it's thought that there's several hundreds of genes involved in autism. And so far, there's about 150 that have been identified. So there's a thinking, based on the information, we think that there's a lot more. And sort of the reason why genetics are important. It's not so much, it really isn't, to find cures, it's not to develop tests. Really the genetics become relevant in developing interventions and predicting outcomes, things that would impact quality of life. So and the reason how you use genetics to do that is by basically the more genetic information you have and the better you can link all those differences to treatment outcomes, the better you have sort of to inform the population you're trying to help about what's best for them. So rather than sort of looking at like your demographics, for instance, or you're looking at your age and trying to guess, taking your best educated guess on what intervention or what you might need to help. That is all can be very subjective, and it may explain part of it. But if you can link that to genetic information that's unique and very precise to individuals, then you can better route people to the that they need to their quality of life. So it does take ultimately, this is the notion of precision medicine or personalized medicine, which the field in general, medicine is moving towards this direction.
Right.
Much since the sequencing of the human genome in 2003, I believe, that this approach, using genetic data, to really inform treatments for individuals is the future of medicine. And SPARK is very much autism focused. So one way that a big difference can be made is if this genetic information that's collected in the diversity of people with autism can be used in this way to better predict and better understand people's experiences and the things that they need to live the best life they can.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joe. I appreciate that. Okay, Chase.
So, Aniela, who would you want to participate in Spark?
Okay, yeah. So in order for someone to participate in SPARK, they must have a professional diagnosis of autism, live in the United States, and read and understand English. And that part is mostly for the consenting process. And to register, you have to be the parent or a legal guardian of a dependent with autism. or an independent adult with a diagnosis of autism. And the parent or legal guardian registers for themselves and the dependent. And then they also invite the other parent or legal guardian to participate in the study. And one full biological sibling of the child with autism who does not have an autism diagnosis is also welcome to participate. And lastly, if you're registering as an independent adult, you can invite biological parents and full biological siblings to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Annie, how easy is it to participate in the SPARK?
So the cool thing about the SPARK study is that it's really easy to participate. One, it can all be done from home. So it consists of registering and consenting online. And then after that process is done, you are shipped saliva sample boxes to your house. And once you're done with the saliva collection, which is really just a small amount, you ship the boxes back and they have a prepaid label. So that's all set. And once the boxes reach the lab, you'll be able to see in your SPARK portal online that they've reached the lab, they're being processed. And that's when you're done with the genetic part of the study. You'll receive your Amazon gift card code after that's all complete. So really easy to do from home. We do also offer Zoom visits, in-person visits if people are comfortable with that, to help with the process of the registering online and the saliva collection. But that's really it for the study. And once you complete that part of the study, you can choose to be notified of other online surveys, as Dr. Joe was talking about earlier, that are about all sorts of different topics. So not just genetics, but autism and sleep, autism and diet. But again, those are all optional and you're invited to participate. If you want to, you can continue to participate in SPARK that way. But the genetic study itself is a one-time study and it's really, really easy.
That's cool.
Thank you. So Annie, what is the time commitment involved with the testing?
Yeah, really good question. So the enrollment process that happens online, like I just mentioned, that takes typically about 30 minutes. You can start that process and save it at any time. So you don't need to sit down and do it all at once. So that can be done pretty easy and fast. And then the saliva collection, that can really take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. Just kind of depends. Like I said, it is a small sample. But sometimes with kids, it can be difficult to collect saliva. But one cool thing about that too is you can do it throughout a night or a couple days or weeks. So you don't have to do the entire saliva collection at one time.
That's good to know because
really great for kids.
Children on the spectrum, trying to get them to spit, get the saliva could be a little bit challenging for us. So that's really good to know that it could be collected.
Exactly. It's hard. Yeah. Yeah.
So how long before we receive the results, Annie?
So that's something we really like to stress to families is that first off, not everyone will receive a genetic result back. Because SPARK is a research study, our genetic analysis is not like a clinical genetic test that you might hear of. So SPARK provides genetic results in the form of a clinical report if they discover a genetic change that is associated with autism. But right now, that's only happening in about 10% of families. So about 10% are hearing back that they do have one of these genetic changes that's been associated with autism. The idea is that as the more people participate in SPARK, that number will increase and more families will start to hear. Also a possibility that later on they find another gene that's linked to autism and then you're notified. So it could be months from now, it could be years from now, but the idea is that 10% will continue to increase and more families will hear back. But also important to note that genes are not the only cause of autism. So not all people with autism will have a genetic difference.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Thank you. Okay, Chase.
Is it safe to give us saliva? Okay. Cheyanne, is it safe to give a saliva sample in the time of COVID-19?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that I'm really glad that we're bringing this up because I think it's on a lot of people's minds when they're deciding whether or not to participate. but it is completely safe to give a saliva sample for SPARK during COVID. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes before the kit even gets to you. So they're being taken care of with a lot of extra precautions. Things like non-essential employees are working from home to limit exposure and who is around the kits. And then there's an extensive cleaning program that's been set up for sanitation throughout the day. And employees are wearing gloves when handling any internal contents of saliva kit boxes and things like that. But labs across the country are really continuing their standard universal precautions, which aren't really any different than at other times because there are always viruses present in bodily fluids. So this is something that's always been pretty safe. There's a solution in the tubes that will inactivate some of the viruses. And then to prevent leakage, the sample should be packaged in the sealable plastic bag, which is provided in the saliva kits when you have that. And then when the lab gets it, they heat the samples to kill any of the remaining viruses. So it's really a pretty good process that happens with these.
Thank you so much, Cheyanne.
Yeah.
Dr. Joe, you're next.
Great.
Okay, Dr. Joe. So how is SPARK different? You know, there's so many different DNA studies out there and they've been around for a long time. So in terms of SPARK, how is it different from these other studies like ATN Network and the Missing Network that Autism Speaks has? What makes SPARK so different and so special?
Yeah, so that's great because there are a lot of different studies out there, and as you're mentioning, even just beyond research, there's all these genetic services too. So there's a lot of things that you can do with some genetic testing. I think the thing that differentiates SPARK from the other studies, like Missing, as an example, is there's genetics is part of SPARK, but it really is only part of SPARK. Whereas a lot of studies will just focus on the genetics, so more of a one and done type of a sample. Then afterwards, your samples or your genetics are able to be studied by
Dr.
research.
Joe, let me interrupt because you broke up a little bit, and I think it was very important what you just said about the difference. So I just want to make sure the audience understands what you said. So basically,
Yes.
you're saying that there is a focus on genetics, which a lot of studies focus on that. They're just done with that. But SPARK Yale goes a little bit further than that. You try to know more about the actual individuals to learn more how to help them out in any type of way or find some type of solutions or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And kind of what I mentioned in the beginning of this being more of an ongoing partnership,
Right.
So rather than just submitting genetic sample, genetics is just part of SPARK. It's sort of like maybe, you do the genetics, right? But after that, there's a lot of other research you can participate in, and not just, here through Yale, but there's about 20 plus sites across the country who are sort of involved in SPARK, all doing research related to autism, with the goal of improving lives and improving outcomes. So being part of the SPARK community, gives you access to those studies. And those studies themselves also some of them give you feedback on your responses. So you can see how when you finish a survey and everyone in the survey is closed, some studies will give you feedback on how you responded based on the other people who had answered the questions in the survey. And if there's research data that's published, using the SPARK community's information, then you also get updates on that. So the genetics is a part of it, but it's not more than that. And I think I'm so glad you're emphasizing that because I think that is one thing that sets this apart from a lot of the other studies.
And that's why this conversation was also it's important to me as a mother who has a child on the spectrum and considering what this test will do, but just the fact alone that you're looking for the quality of life for the individuals on the spectrum outside of just only including genetics is very powerful to me, very meaningful to me. So thank you so much for sharing that distinction.
Why is it important to have different ethnic groups?
So slow down, do it again.
Why is it important to have different ethnic groups participate?
A great question. So, these are great. Wow. Okay, so that one is yeah. There's if you think about like how research is done, research is done by you're studying a small subset of a very diverse population, and based on the results you get from that subset, you're trying to make recommendations, for the entire population. So if the small sample, if it's a small sample and there's only say males and men in the sample, then the results, can you apply those results to women? And this has a lot of historic background too, because a lot of the studies in the past have primarily focused on men. Yet from those studies, people were assuming they would apply to women when we sort of know that there's some important differences in the biology between men. So you can apply that same principle to different groups of people who may have different genetic makeups. So if you have just primarily one ethnic group or category of people participating in the study, can you confidently say that the results of that can be applied evenly throughout the population? And our experience says no, and this applies to a lot of the medical research we've seen with regards to high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes. Different groups of people respond, are affected differently with those kinds of conditions, at least, and also the treatments that work for different populations can also be different, and sort of their outcomes can be different.
Right.
And so, one of the great things about diversity is, there's a lot of benefits of it. You enjoy all our cultural environment here, but at the same time, it makes sort of the one size fits all type of medical approach invalid. So in order for us to get accurate information for as many groups of people possible, we need participation from all people.
Thank you so much for that. That is so true, and it's been proven over the years. And luckily, the science is learning its lessons that everyone's different. So inclusion is so important to provide the best services for everybody in this world, in this country. And there are differences, and so that's why it's important for different people to participate in the study, different ethnic groups to participate in the study, because as us, as African Americans, we don't have anybody of African American descent in these studies. And then when they come out with this great, whatever it might be, for something that comes out, it may help that the groups who participated, but we're going to be left out. So
yeah.
Right. And so you have to make sure that they have as much of a diverse pool of information as possible to help all of us, and not just one culture. It should be multiple cultures, and make sure it's accurate and for everybody. So I think that's really key. And thank you much for answering that, Dr. Joe.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm next again. Oh, I'm next. Okay, Annie, you're next.
I'm ready.
All right, so Annie, as you know, I'm one of these people who are very skeptical about the security and privacy of the DNA testing. So how is my information going to be secure and confidential?
Yes, I think this is a really important topic we're covering, because you are like most people, and it is your personal information. So how it's protected is really important. So all the data that we collect from you or your child is replaced with a randomly assigned code. Any data that could identify you. So these codes allow researchers to share data about you without sharing anything that could link you as a person to that data. And then all of this data and all the records from participating are stored in an electronically secure, encrypted, password protected database. So very protected. They go through great measures to make that a priority. And then also just in general, SPARK will not release any data about you or your child to others or ever publish anything about the study that could identify you without your express permission in that. And the information generated from SPARK's sequencing analysis of the actual DNA cannot be used to determine a person's identity. So that's a question we get a lot. But even so, all the sequencing data is stored securely in the SPARK database. So they do make a point to make everything as secure as possible.
So that makes me feel better, because one of the things for Ancestry.com, not to pick on them, but when you're submitting that information to Ancestry for your DNA, you are giving them your name information. But just the fact that you're saying that now we're going to be like a code and a number, that's more secure, I feel, than some of these other programs that are out there. So that's comforting to me. I'm not sure about our audience, but I think that's also very comforting.
Yeah. So you will be putting still in your name and your information, but that research or that information is not available to any other researchers that could identify you.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was a great response. Right, Chase, you're next.
Okay. So, Cheyanne, besides genetics, what other kind of data does SPARK collect?
Yeah, so Roger touched on this a little bit, but so obviously SPARK collects two different types of data. So the one is the genetic sample that we're all familiar with is the main thing. But SPARK also collects information that participants share through the surveys that Roger mentioned. So all kinds of surveys will be available for you and your portal if you decide to participate, and they're going to be different based on individual to individual. And they're totally optional. You can choose which ones you want to complete and which ones you don't. And then they're used to collect medical and behavioral information. And these go back into, like Roger was saying, if they end up finding some sort of clinical thing that some other study discovers, then you'll be notified of that later if you choose to. But like I said, they're all optional. So you're choosing what information you're giving through those surveys.
Who has access to my data?
Yeah, so like Annie said, your data will never be shared with third parties. The only way that your data is once it's encrypted, basically, sorry. So when you join SPARK, you allow the Simons Foundation to share your research with your data with the National Database for Autism Research, which is an acronym NDAR. And NDAR is a central research data source for autism researchers from around the country. But this data is the encrypted data that Annie was talking about. And so it's stored without any information that could ever identify you. And then all information shared with SPARK is kept securely in that database. And only if you request and receive a genetic result from SPARK will this information go into your medical record. So you can choose if your doctor would have access to that information, but that's totally up to your permission. And then you can choose to have genetic results returned to you by a genetic counselor or your own primary care physician if you are in the 10% that Annie mentioned that received that genetic result. And but basically, to answer the question more simply, there are a lot of researchers around the country that technically have access to your data, but that is encrypted and it would never be able to be traced back to you. And those researchers also sign a privacy agreement too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a really good response.
We should also add that not just anybody can do the research. So even though this is a thing that can be shared among researchers, not just any researcher can access it. In fact, you have to apply to be able to access it. And the application, it's not just a simple application. It has to be a scientific or medically valid reason that aligns with the values of SPARK and the community in general. So that's there's
That's
a lot
good.
of sort of protections in place so that it's not misused.
That's really good to know because I don't want anybody DNAing my child and making another Chase. We only have one Chase.
Right.
More joy in the world.
That's very good to know. Thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Joe. Okay, Aniela. I said your name right. So we pretty much talked about this, but is identifying the information like your name, your email addresses, is shared with anyone outside the research study?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that identifying information, names, phone numbers, email addresses, it's only shared with researchers who are using SPARK data for research. And like Roger said, these researchers have been approved by a SPARK committee. And you are completely in control of the information you share with us. So we're not going to be sharing your data without your permission ever. And if you choose to participate in a study, in that case, we'll share your contact information with researchers so that they'll be able to contact you. But that's all up to you.
Thank you. Next, bud.
How long do you keep the data and what do you do with it? Do we get updates on the study?
Yeah. So there's going to be a reanalysis of your saliva sample every year, assuming a gene isn't found upon that first analysis that they do. And as Annie mentioned, 10% of participants receive results right now, but we hope that this number increases as time goes on with the discovery of new genes and also increased number of participants. And then your saliva sample is kept in a secure laboratory for an indefinite period of time. And the samples will be stripped of your personal identifying information, labeled with that unique code that Annie mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, going back to Dr. Joe.
Well, I should also add something to that.
Sure.
If you want to withdraw your information, you can at times. So just because you mailed in your tube, if you want to change your mind at any point later on, you can have your information removed from the database.
Oh, that's really good to know. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Joe. So how does a genetic study help people with autism? Oh, that was yours, Chase. I stole yours. Sorry. I took his. We'll take the next one. You can do this one. All right, Dr. Joe.
So that's similar to what I was saying in the beginning, is that, and actually this is a question we get a lot, is that, how does this help people who are living with autism today? So I think the implication in some of that is that, is this something that is going to be used to, against people with autism? And, I would strongly say no. And the reason why people with autism should participate in as many people as possible is a similar reason why we want diversity of people participating. So going back to the question about ethnicity and race and participating in research, groups can only be represented if they are participating in research, but it's not, it also gets more complicated than that. So even people within, the same ethnic group are quite diverse. And, even folks within the same ethnic group can respond very differently, to treatments, so what does that really boil down to? Well, it boils down to, at the very core, it boils down to genetics, so if you think about why it would make sense for a lot of people with autism to participate is that, I think we all sort of agree that it's a truth when Stephen Shore says, if you've met one person with autism, you met one person with autism, which goes to it points out the heterogeneity or sort of the diversity, within the autism community. So even if you had everybody, if you had a group of people with autism participating in research, that doesn't mean that that research would generalize to everybody with autism, because so many people with different manifestations or different, some people call them subtypes of autism. So what the genetics does, it allows sort of the identification of, if there's a subtype, if you want to call it that, it allows for the identification of that, and then if enough people participate, then what you'll have is you'll be able to do analyses, that predict, treatment outcomes or, health outcomes for people with different genetic subtypes. So this goes back to the idea of having medicine or some kind of an intervention or some kind of treatment, that's highly tailored, to the individual. But the only way we will know what helps, is enough people participate. So without the data, we can't get the result. So in order for us to get the result, we need as much data as possible, as comprehensive as possible, so the results can be applied to as many different people as possible.
Thank you. That was really, I like that explanation. That made it very clear to me. Okay. Oh, Chase. You're next, Chase.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. It has to be me because this is my child. So will it help to know that I or my child has genes linked to autism? Can you let us know as parents if yeah, if my Chase gets a test, what's the value of also me doing a test as well? Dr. Joe.
Sorry, can you repeat the second part? You said if Chase gets a
if Chase gets a test as the person on the spectrum, why should I get the test as a parent?
Okay, got it. So the parent portion, helps explain how much of it is heritable. So each of these different things can get at different questions. Like for instance, a lot of autism is to the de novo genetic changes. Meaning that changes that sort of are not present in parents or either parent, but present in the person with autism. So in understanding the contributors of autism, having both parents involved allows us to see how common it is that things are actually inherited versus things sort of occurring with this more atypical route. Now, in terms of knowing whether you have a gene or genetic change link with autism, I'll be frank that a lot of times, we identify genes, and it's unclear, what else aside from autism, is going to, does this person need to know, and even though that's sort of more common the case, there are cases, where the autism is linked to a known condition. For instance, Fragile X is probably the most common example of a known genetic difference, that's associated with autism, right? But there's also a lot of other health risks, or health maintenance issues that one needs to attend to and be vigilant. So if someone just comes in and say, hey, they have autism, okay, that's part of it, right? But if you have the genetics, and it lines up with known genetic syndromes or conditions, that have, different risks or different kinds of things, or different things you need to be particularly vigilant about. It's good to know as soon as possible, so that you can exercise more on the model of prevention, rather than sort of find out when things get a little late in the game, and somebody can. It's basically to help maintain the health of the individual, based on what's known about how that change lines up with other conditions that we know. So um, that's probably the most tangible reason why someone would want to get a test. And it's something that is recommended for new diagnoses, because if you do find something, it could be life-changing.
So that's has my head spinning because it happens all the time. I'm always thinking. So how does this study will it determine why there's different levels of autism spectrum, people on the spectrum, from nonverbal to verbal? Is there some type of genetic connection of why is there such a wide spectrum of autism?
Yeah, I think what the studies have shown, even though a long time ago it was thought that the genetics would be fairly straightforward. You would have an autism gene, but that certainly hasn't been the case. So now we're finding about 100, over 150 genes connected, potentially hundreds more. So if everybody or most people have sort of different genetic combinations that are linked to autism, then those combinations are going to look differently.
Mhm.
Not even sort of the genetic part of it. There's also sort of the environmental part of it. So few things. There's some things strictly genetic. Autism is thought to be a combination of genetic and environmental factors. So we've got a lot of different variables, in the mix that sort of all come together somehow and impact the person who you're meeting. So, since there's all these different things and different combinations, then it makes sense that people are going to look a lot different. And on top of that, human beings are also very different, anyways. So add that on top of it, and that saying, is one of the most, I think, one of the most famous things. The one person with autism, you know, one person with autism. So
Yeah.
that's very easy to remember, and the science, I think, backs it up.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. That's a great response. Okay, Chase.
So, Cheyanne, what will you do? What will you or your family get out of participating in Spark?
Yeah, so I think Roger really talks about a lot of this in a really encompassing way, but I'll try to tie up some loose ends. So other than the monetary incentive of the Amazon gift card, participating in Spark opens up different opportunities for each individual and family. So by completing surveys, for example, you'll generally be informed about the results from those you fill out. And while the results don't represent a clinical evaluation, it's the hope of Spark that participants find value in some of the survey results, like we've talked about. And by participating in Spark, you'll help shape the future of autism research, which Spark, we really like to emphasize. Your DNA could spark the next genetic discovery. So with DNA from thousands of families across the country, we will be able to learn more about genes that may be related to autism and discover new ones. In return, you'll be able to get updates on the latest research, join other autism research studies, find possible genetic causes of autism in your own family, and power future autism research for years to come.
Thank you. Stop saying cool all the time. You keep saying cool. I can't. You gotta stop saying cool all the time.
Same. It's fine.
What feedback have you received from participants in Connecticut?
What? Again?
Sorry, yeah. I mean, what feedback have you received from participants in Connecticut?
Yeah, I'm glad I get this question because I have good things to report. So we have really received good feedback from families across Connecticut, but also across the country. Because you can do it from home, it's been great that we've had families participate from all over. Last year, we created over 250 families that participated just through our site here at Yale. So pretty big number. And I'd say the biggest common reaction we get is how easy the study is to do and how great it is that you can do it from home, you can do it on your own, and so much is in your control. On the other side, I would say the biggest challenge we hear about is difficulty with that online registration, really just technology issues. It's the password requirement is so secure that it makes you come up with a crazy password, which is great for security, but definitely like stumps a lot of families. So what we do is we offer Zoom appointments to try and help you get through that whole registration process in kind of a smooth 30 minutes. But besides that, the saliva collection, again, like I said, with children, that can be a little bit more difficult. So we have tips to help with that. But the biggest theme is how easy it is to do and how happy they are to be a part of a bigger research community. On that note, we also have a video from one of our SPARK families, which I see on here. I want to say hi. But we're going to watch that. It's really short, but you can hear from them about their actual experience participating in SPARK. So I think that does a really good job.
You want to say introduce their name before I load it up, Annie?
Yeah, so Lynn is on here and her son Carl and her husband Dave, and we've known them pretty well, and they're really great.
Okay, here is a video.
Well, we were very pleased to be involved in the SPARK study we did at Yale in person before the pandemic. And we really applaud Dr. Joe and all his assistants because they sit up tall. That's right, sit up tall. They all, do so much to help people with autism in so many ways. So the science is important, and we wanted to be a part of it as a family. So we were really happy to do it.
The Yale program is just outstanding, and we just love Dr. Joe. And we had a great experience, right, Carl?
How was it?
How was it?
Was it
easy?
It was easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
All you had to do is spit in the cup, right?
That's all you had to do. And they did all the rest of the work.
Right. So we encourage anyone who cares about, finding out more science about autism and, just furthering the cause to be a part of this important study.
Yeah, we sure do.
Thank you so much. That was so awesome. So it's so important to hear from other families and make us, other parents, feel good. So thank you so much for having the family. I can't say the last name correctly. I don't want to butcher the last name. Anyhow, the Rosini family. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. We really do.
Carl.
Yeah, we love Dr. Joe and his SPARK team too. So that's pretty much it. So I do have an extra question because I was thinking more about it when Dr. Joe was talking. And what I was thinking about was when we say the 10%, what's the other 90%? So what does that mean?
Yeah. So it's easier to understand if you think about not all the genes have been identified. So because you haven't identified all the genes, you really can't give people a negative result. The only thing you can really tell them, is if, all right, there's a match between, one of the genes and the identified genes for autism.
Okay.
And that list changes every year. So new genes are added, and every time, gene is added, then it checks against the list again, who has a match for that gene. So you might get a result here, maybe next year, or maybe year after that. But then like maybe in 5 years, you get something, right? Because that a gene that was newly discovered matches a gene that you have, So then you get a result then. But then, there's also, not not all genes or not all causes of autism will have an identified gene. So that's also something to keep in mind. That not every cause or every single person with autism, we're going to be able to say, all right, these are the genes that are involved. We can't do that for every single person. So that's also something to keep in mind. Because there are environmental things. There are maybe some complicated genetics going on. Like for instance, uh, each gene may have a sort of a low contribution, but you have a bunch of them, and it's that combination, interacts with the environment, then creates the person who you're talking to in front of you, but those genes, since there's so many of them and neither of them are very sort of strong or prominent, then they may not stand out, in a test or in a sample. But of course, the more people that you get, the more likely you're going to be able to find those kinds of genes. But it sort of partially explains, why it's always going to be some percentage. That's not 100.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand what you're saying. I think I have it, but you could correct me. So you already have a pool of identified genes. And people are coming in getting tested, and you match and see if they have those same type of genes that are already identified. However, we know that all the genes have not been identified yet. And so the more people we have come in, we might find some more other genes that are associated with autism. And so therefore, you keep going back and comparing the data you have to find possibly more future genes for individuals on the spectrum, which will help out more with the study.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Then you touch on a lot of great things. Like the more people you have, the more likely you'll be able to find more genes. And the more you find more genes, the more you identify people that have those genes and contact them with the result. So
very dynamic study. It's not like a linear.
It's sort of science happening in real time. So a lot of stuff. You find the gene, and then you can make a test to find everyone that gene. This is evolving. So people who are participating, their information is being compared with the latest information that's being developed in science.
Okay, so we had a couple comments in chat. I think it was from Roberta. So that's so exciting, the thought of matching treatment to subtypes. Oh, thanks, Roberta, for the feedback.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that people, it's a notion that's been around in medicine for a long time. It's just that it's been in certain subsets of medicine. But I think since, the mapping of the human genome, this idea of sort of the range of genes and how they're expressed, was really not known, so we really didn't have that to use to base our medical decisions. But now that we do, this is going to be kind of the future of medicine more broadly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. We're going to go to your website so you can see Doctor's background, nice background screen he has, which has always been impressive. He looks pretty good in there. It's sparkforautism.org/Yale. I'm going to share my screen so you can also see where the that page is. I was pretty sure I put it up here. And don't make a liar out of me. I thought I put it up here. If not, I'll look for it in a minute. I think I moved it because I was moving so many things. I'll go to it in 1 minute. I just want to make sure I go to the right page. So is there anything else that you wanted to add while I look for this? I'm not going to share yet. While I get the page. Dr. Joe?
Let's see.
I need a stall. I gotta.
You guys did such a, I must say, like, I've never had, such a thoughtful variety of questions from anyone I've talked to yet. So, you guys really, I think you guys really hit out of the park with this. You really, gave it a lot of thought, and that's great. Because, sometimes, we're sort of working in the field, and what seemingly is what we think most people know. We might think that what we know most people might know, and then we sort of miss a lot of things that people might be thinking about or people might be concerned about, and sort of inadvertently not address those. So it's great that that you're asking all these questions, because half of these we probably wouldn't have thought about on our own because we sort of think, oh, okay, we already know that, so we think, all right, well, maybe other people know that too, but it's not the case.
That's like everything else when you're in it. Like, I'm a tech person. I could talk tech, speak to somebody like, what? But that's why when I approached you and your Spark team, hey, let's talk about the frequently asked questions. And Cheyanne and Annie and Aniela did a great job of finding help and find those questions, and we added a few more. So thank you to your team as well, that they capture these questions that people have asked over the time to answer them. And it's great to have this conversation. And what I appreciate so much is you kept it at a level that we can understand. So that's the key thing, because sometimes, when you are a doctor, you like to talk about big words and stuff like that. And we're just so appreciative that you kept it that we can understand it as the typical public. So I did find my screen. I am going to share your website. If anybody wants to talk over it while I'm doing it.
When we ask people to participate in research, it really is, it's not a trivial thing for a lot of folks, and especially something as sensitive as DNA. It sounds kind of scary, so it's kind of a loaded topic. So when you hear the word, people's minds might automatically jump to these assumptions that aren't correct, and until you sort of ask them in a forum where everyone can, then people sort of maintain conclusions that may be inaccurate, and that sort of prevents a barrier to participating and to be involved. So really appreciate this.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, this conversation really helped me open my eyes to it as well. As before I was like, Dr. Joe, we're from a different era, but it's really the way you and the team explained it to me. I do feel more confident to participate in this type of study. So it was also beneficial to me as well, and I hope to many other parents who, if not watching now, they'll look at this later on, because we are going to also have this on the on YouTube, so it could be shared continuously. So here's the website, Spark. You can tell nice, pretty Spark logo, so you're at the right page. So just be careful. There are some people who like to hack into certain things and create their own page, so you definitely could tell by the logo. And it's about the study. And I know, Dr. Joe, you also have a new video out about the study. I'm not sure if you have it here or not yet, but you do have a new video promoting the study. So Dr. Joe, your Facebook page, we should probably talk about that as well, correct? You want to share?
Yeah. So the Facebook page has, basically everything that I do ends up on that page somehow. So
yeah. So we go to your
so
Facebook.
There's what's that?
Should we go to your Facebook page or the Spark Facebook page?
No, you go to mine, because there's some other stuff that may be of interest to people, especially where our work overlaps, and that's the community stuff.
Dr. Joe is very busy on social media. He's more busy than I am. So let me share it. Everybody. Oh, this is Dr.
Well, what? I see all the great things you're doing, and I'm like, oh man, this is great. I have to step it up.
So this is Dr. Joe in his handsome picture in the middle. And so he has a lot of things going on. Here's all his, lots of stuff he's done. But
oh, hold on. You know how many, if you go you see the, let's see, it's actually, this is my, my personal Facebook page, although there's really nothing that personal on it. The one that people should look at is the facebook.com / Dr. Roger Joe, one word.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Oops. See?
There you go.
Okay.
So this is the one that has all of the information on, there's the Spark stuff. Actually, I think that first thing is the video, that new video you're talking about.
It's only 1 minute video. We have a little time. We have like a minute left, so I guess we could go ahead and play it if you want.
Research universities and autism centers, including Yale. In order to Spark is transforming the way autism research is done. It's the largest research study of autism ever. We partner with the nation's leading research universities and autism centers, including Yale. In order to advance research and discovery in autism that matters to you, we need everyone to participate. We are in this for the long term. Together, we will advance autism research for years to come. Your contributions will make a difference. Participation is entirely online. It's simple, it's free, and we keep your data private. Are you the parent of a child with ASD? Join us. Are you a person with an ASD diagnosis? We need you. Participation is simple. Step 1, create an account online. Step 2, invite family members. Step 3, complete surveys and return your saliva kit for DNA analysis. Step 4, discover and participate in new research opportunities. The Spark team at Yale is here for you and ready to help.
Yeah, so that was part of our AFC. I think we had that as a, what was that? We had the virtual booth.
Yeah, it was in our virtual booth. Fair.
Oh, you got a couple of questions in here, Dr. Joe. Can you see the chat?
Okay.
Can you read it, or you want me to read it to you?
Actually, I was able to pull it up, so. Oh, yeah.
So I said I used to think that more sophisticated brain like fMRI.
You know what? So this is an interesting question because I used to do a lot of, actually my PhD work is in neuroimaging. You know, imaging is, the thing to remember about imaging is that it's sort of a, you know, it is something that's sort of downstream. And what I mean by that is you're really measuring, you're sort of measuring some effect of biology, you know, but not necessarily measuring sort of the underlying biology itself. That's where the genetic stuff is a strength, you know, in that the genetics is sort of what it boils down to, and then brain activity on imaging, you know, or you know, from an MRI scan, you know, these are things that you've measured downstream, you know, and those are going to have the most variability. And a lot of the analyses are difficult because there's so much variability, you know. So there's been a lot of work trying to figure out sort of neurosignatures in brain imaging, but it hasn't really, there's nothing available to the point where you can sort of make diagnoses based on brain imaging. So there's definitely some limitations to brain imaging. In a lot of the field is, I mean, there's still used in clinical practice for in settings like the emergency room. It's still used as a diagnostic tool, but in terms of using it as a diagnostic tool for something that is more, that doesn't have like clear neuropathology, when I say neuropathology, it's like when you're looking for like a stroke, or you're looking for, a tumor or something like that. Those are pathologies that have a more clear visualization on a brain image. Something like neurodiversity is a lot harder to sort of measure, using brain imaging.
Thank you so much. And I think, thank you, Lynn, for your, for the feedback. We appreciate it. All right, Dr. Joe, it's a little bit after 7 o'clock, so you just say, do your past things.
Thank you, Dr. Joe and Aniela and Cheyanne and Annie.
Annie.
Yeah, I just did that.
I just did. So thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to have this available on YouTube. I think this is very beneficial for any parent to see this. If they missed it, we have a recording of it. We're going to share it. Dr. Joe, you like to share stuff, so you can share it as well. But we do appreciate you taking your time out. It's in the evening, and this was so important to have this conversation. And thank you so much for being our first live guest. Your team did a fantastic job. You did a fantastic job. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Helen and Chase.
Thank you for having us.
All right, and you have a great Thanksgiving.
You guys too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.